All right, so welcome everybody. This is Michael White, Marketing Manager with PSSCS, responsible for our supply chain visibility solutions, primarily Flex Global View. And since this crisis began, I can tell you we have seen an exponential increase in the number of customers signing up for FGV. We've got a lot of customers that have come out of the woodwork who used to have access years back and now suddenly are seeking their access to be re-enabled. And just in a matter of 2 weeks, we've added over 900 new customer users to FGV. That's more than we typically add on a given month. So with this huge influx of new customers logging into FGV, we're also getting bombarded with a lot of calls and support questions from our UPS partners about their customers' access. So we wanted to take this time to review with everybody the tools that we have available to us in FGV in terms of how we manage our customers' access, how we set up customers, and I'm going to show you some other helpful tips that we often get questions about. So back in September 2018, we introduced new functionality in FGV that gave our people access to what we call customer management functionality in FGV. Prior to then, just about everything you needed to do in terms of customer setup had to be funneled through the support desk, and it wasn't a very efficient process. So we introduced these new tools, and I want to walk you through some of that functionality today, and hopefully also open it up to some questions. So the things we're going to cover today are going to be we're going to start with UPS or FGV access in case there's anybody out there who doesn't have FGV access and they're wondering how they go about getting it. We're going to review some of the basic FGV concepts. Then we're going to look into the steps we follow when we want to set up a new customer. And then we're going to look at the tools that we have for managing our existing customers' FGV access and some good tips and suggestions for that. And then we'll get into some miscellaneous FGV challenges that UPSers often face based on the many questions we receive every day from our partners. So let's first take a look here. This is the process we go through today. If you don't already have access as a UPSer to FGV, these are the steps you'll go through. And it's basically going through ATRS. I'm going to make these slides available after the call. You'll also see them in the recording. But basically, you have to go through ATRS, request Flex Global View access. That request then goes to your manager, who has to then approve it. Once your access has been approved, then we have this URL. There's been a lot of confusion, I know. Whoop, let me back up. With UPSers and wondering where they're supposed to go to get their access. I'm going to post this URL to the chat so everyone can see. This is where we all go when we want to log in. And what you want to do is when you go to this URL, and you key in your AD and password, so you log in. Once you've logged in, then you want to go to your favorites and add it to your favorites. Don't try to add it to your favorites prior to logging in. You got to log in first and then add it to your favorites. Let's take a look at some just real basic principles with FGV. So two things that we're really going to key on today is the concept of the FGV business ID and the user ID, okay? The business ID is something that we as UPSers have to set up for customers, and it's set up at the company level, right? Customers cannot send up their own bus ID, and I am asked all the time why we don't have the functionality whereby customers can set up their own bus ID. Well, the fact is that many of our customers, they have no idea what their accounts are, especially when we're dealing with customers that have multiple accounts. So we leave it up to our people to ensure that when they're setting up a business ID, that they've linked all the accounts for that customer to the bus ID. And the account numbers serve as the foundation of everything that customers see in FGV. So when something's missing, when shipments aren't there or entries aren't available, 9 times out of 10, it's because the proper account number hasn't been linked to the customer's bus ID. Once a customer has a bus ID, then we create a user ID for them. Now, in the past, prior to just 3 weeks ago, we had to invent a user ID for the customer. We recently went through a process where we introduced a new login approach where now today the customer's email address is now their user ID. And we did this because many of our UPS customer-facing technology applications will be migrating to the same platform we've just migrated FGV to. And this will allow customers down the road to have just one user ID, their email address, that will give them access to all UPS customer-facing applications. The other great thing about this setup is that now customers can have just one user ID to access multiple business IDs. Prior to this change, customers needed a separate user ID for every business ID setup they wanted to access. That's no longer the case. So typically when we sit down and we decide, okay, we've got a new customer here, or maybe they're not new, but we want to get them on FGV. And before we begin to set up a customer on FGV, there's a checklist we need to go through, right? We need to first of all confirm that they don't already have a bus ID. We need to make sure we know all of their account numbers. We need to make sure those account numbers aren't already linked to a bus ID somewhere. We need to make sure we understand within the customer structure who wants to see what. You know, do they have a division or subsidiary, only subset of their business? Maybe they don't want to see everything. And then we also need to know our customer's contact details. Now let me jump into FGV, and we're going to start running through some examples of all this. Now, I always like to tell people, at least UPSers, one of the greatest things about FGV is how easy it is for us as UPSers to jump in and pull up any customer we want to view, right? Over my 27 years, I've worked with all manner of UPS customer technology solutions. And I've always found it very frustrating that I wasn't able to quickly go in and pull up a customer and see what they're seeing. You know, you can't go into WorldShip or QVM, type in Walmart, and all of a sudden see all Walmart's shipping history. With FGV, we as UPSers can in fact do that. When we sign in as UPSers, this is typically the screen we'll see. We'll see all clients. We won't see anything on the dashboard. It's all blank because we don't ship anything, right? Our customers do all the shipping. So we've got a customer, and we want to set them up with FGV. So the first thing we want to do is we want to check to see, does the customer already exist? This is critical because we have got a mess of FGV business IDs in our systems. We have got thousands of bus IDs that are not used, been out there forever, and in many cases it's because folks go in, they set up a bus ID, not realizing that bus ID has already been set up for a customer. So the first thing we do whenever we want to set up a customer is we go to all clients and we type in, let's say we don't really know how the customer might be spelled in FGV, right? We may have a company that was spelled, you know, Inc. or Corp. Or it was abbreviated. We just don't know. So we always want to do a lookup. All right, so we click on Lookup Bus ID. Let's say I've got a customer, let's see, I'll call Telecrafters, right? And I want to set them up, but I want to first find out, are they already in here? And I'm going to just type in the first few letters of the customer's name, Tele. I'm going to hit search. And now I'm going to see every single customer whose name begins with Tele. It's not the bus ID name, it's the client name. So you can see here we have a long list of customers whose name begins with the letters T-E-L-E. Now I'm looking for a customer called Telecrafters, and voila, here they are. So in this case, if I was trying to set up a bus ID, I'd want to reconsider that because they already have one. And if I click on the bus ID, I hit save, and it pulls up the recent activity for that customer. So obviously this is one I don't want to set up because it's already set up. I may have to edit it, maybe change some account numbers around or add some email domains. We can do that, and I'm going to show you how to do that later. Now, the other thing we want to do before we set up a bus ID for a customer is we have our account numbers in hand, right? We need to make sure those account numbers aren't already linked to an existing bus ID. Just because we maybe didn't find a bus ID under the name, it could be that that account number is linked to a bus ID we would have never even thought of, right? So let's take an example of that. I'm going to grab an account here. And this is the link up here I want you to become very familiar with today. The Setup Monitor link here in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. This is where it all happens in terms of setting up customers, editing customers, looking up stuff. So we want to look up an account, right? So we're going to go down here to the Client Setup Service. This has just about everything we need to know about customers. One of the four options is account linking status. So I can pull this up, paste an account number, hit search, give it a second to chew on it, and it tells me that that account number is indeed linked to this bus ID, and it's an E2K account number. So if I wanted to link that account to a different bus ID, the first thing I would have to do is unlink the account from this one in order to link it to another one. An account number can only be linked to one bus ID. Even in a parent-child scenario that I'm going to talk about later, they can either be linked to the child or to the parent. They can't be linked to both. Now, a very popular visibility option in FGV are for our package customers. We have a lot of customers in the brokerage arena these days that are package customers that are migrating over to FGV because they prefer the brokerage visibility that FGV provides over QVMI. They especially like the fact that FGV stores all of their entry and document data for 5 years. So let's say we want to set up a small package customer with brokerage visibility. And we have their 6-digit account. Now, if we want to look them up, we put in the 6-digit account, but per this text up here, we have to put 4 zeros in front of the package account. And then we hit search. And we can see that this package account number is indeed tied to a bus ID. And we know it's set up for brokerage visibility because the source system is BOSS. All right, so you always want to check your account numbers before you go setting up a bus ID. And this helps in all kinds of manners, right? So sometimes you may get a shipment and your customer is unable to view the shipment. And you're wondering, well, what's going on? Well, grab the account number that's tied to that shipment and do a lookup of that account number. You may find that that account number isn't linked to the bus ID that your customer is linked to. It's a completely different one, and that's why they're not seeing the shipment. We see this all the time, where an account number is tied to one bus ID, the user is tied to a different one, and that's why the user is unable to see the shipment or the entry. So we've checked the bus, let's say we've checked the bus ID, we've checked the accounts, everything's clear, there's no existing bus ID, the account numbers are not linked, so we're ready to set them up, right? So where do we go to do that? We go back up here to Setup Monitor, back to Client Setup Service, and we go to New Business ID Setup. From here, we create a bus ID, name it whatever we want. We put the customer's business name in. If we are creating a child bus ID that we want to link up to a parent that already exists, we can key that parent in here, and that bus ID will automatically become a child of the parent. This is also a very important step here. We need to select the homepage dashboard default for the customer. I'm seeing a lot of customers that all they care about in FGV are shipments. But whenever they log in, they're landing on the purchase order dashboard or they're landing on the brokerage dashboard, which is of no value to them. So we need to be careful that when we come in here to set up a bus ID, we select the homepage dashboard default screen that they will be utilizing most often. So if they're all about shipments, we want to make sure we're selecting the shipments dashboard as the homepage default. Now, next step is the email domain. This is also very critical. When we set up reports or when customers set up reports to get emailed to them on an ongoing basis, for example, those reports can only go to recipients whose email domain matches the email domain we put in here. And we can add as many email domains as we want. Now, 99% of the time, when we look at the email domains for bus IDs, we find that they are typical, like at ups.com or at teledyne.com. Every once in a while, customers will be using public domains like at gmail.com or at Yahoo. And we allow that, but we want to strongly discourage the use of public email domains for bus IDs. It's a data security issue. If an individual leaves the company, they can still get access to FGV, to that customer's bus ID, because their gmail.com email address is valid and it matches. So we make every effort to ensure that we don't use those public domains unless we absolutely have to. And also, we're very, very important here are the product lines we select for the bus ID. I typically tell people whenever you set up a customer, select transportation, select customs brokerage. Now, if your customer is in fact one of our supplier management customers, obviously you're going to select that. But these are very big customers. They're very few and far between, so it's quite rare that any customer is going to be a supplier management. Same with inventory management. We do have about 200 customers that actively use FGV for visibility into the items they have stored in UPS warehousing facilities around the world, in which case we want to set them up for that. But do not go in and willy-nilly select all of these product lines. You're not doing yourself or the customer any favors. Stick with transportation and customs brokerage. And then lastly, we want to make sure we put in the sales contact information and the customer contact information. And you got to make sure that when you put that client contact email, that email domain you put in here matches the same email domain you put up here. If they don't match, you won't be able to create the bus ID. Once you get all the details in, you hit validate, you hit save, and it goes to our help desk. They approve it, and usually within the hour, you'll get a notification email that the bus ID has been approved. Once it's been approved, then we have to link the account numbers to it, right? The bus ID is just an empty shell without account numbers. So let's go back to home. Once again, we're going to go back up to Setup Monitor, Client Setup. Now we're going to go to New Account Linking to Bus ID. And here we'll enter our bus ID. I'm going to go ahead and put in one that's already been created. The great thing about this screen is even if you have an existing bus ID, right, and you put it in, you can automatically or right away see all the account numbers that are linked to that bus ID. And from here, if for any reason you wanted to remove those account numbers from the bus ID, you could do that. But 9 times out of 10, when you're coming to this screen, you're coming in here to add account numbers. And we do that not by putting it in this box. We enter the account numbers that we want to link in this box. This box up here, if you put an account number in, it serves as a search function, okay? There's a whole host of bus IDs out there that have dozens upon dozens of account numbers linked to it. And if you're trying to find to see if that account number is linked to your bus ID, you could put that in here and do a search on it. But normally what you're doing when you come here is you're wanting to link an account number to your bus ID. And the key with linking account numbers is you've got to know what kind of account number is it that you're looking at. Is this an E2K transportation account? Is this a freight forwarding brokerage account? Is this a small package brokerage account? Is this a small package transportation account? Those are the 4 primary account types that people typically will attach to bus IDs. There's plenty other ones, Alpha Truck, Canadian brokerage systems out there, but the main ones are going to be E2K and BOSS. So let's say we were putting in just a straight up E2K account number, right? We put this in. We're going to say it's transportation, and our source system is E2K. And then we hit submit, and usually within a matter of 3 to 4 minutes, the account number will automatically be linked to the bus ID. It doesn't go to the support desk for approval. It's done automatically. Now, if we wanted to add the brokerage version of this E2K account, so let's say they're shipping to the U.S. and we want to give them both transportation visibility and brokerage visibility, we would add a 6 in front of the account number. That makes the brokerage account. We come over here to module. We'll select brokerage. And then, very important, we select the country. If it's U.S. inbound, obviously we're going to go with U.S. inbound. Source system, we're going to go freight BOSS. Submit, and there we go. Now let's say we wanted to add a package account for brokerage visibility. Again, a very common occurrence. We grab our package account. We don't have to add the 4 zeros in front of it when we're attaching the package accounts on this screen. But we want to go, once again, select brokerage, select the destination country, and then the little difference is here, we want to select small package. Okay, and then we hit submit, and now they're going to get visibility into that small package. Here's an example of a small package account that's already been linked to this bus ID for brokerage. Now, if we wanted the customer to be able to track their 1Z packages, the transportation data. Now, they're not going to see their 1Zs on the dashboard. They can't run transportation reports or alerts around them, but they can track individual 1Zs and get the full details on those 1Zs. The only difference then is we put the package account, and instead of brokerage, this time we select transportation, and we go small package. And now this will give them full visibility into all the details, transportation details for the 1Z when they track them one at a time. All right, so there's the ins and outs of linking account number. So now we've created the bus ID, we've linked the account numbers. The next step is we have to set up the users who are going to access this bus ID. Now, I know a lot of times, I don't know about most of the time, but a lot of times UPSers will do this on customers' behalf, set up their user ID for them. I try to discourage this. I think it's better if you go ahead and show the customer how to set up their own user ID, so that way down the road when they want to set up a different one or additional user ID, they can do it themselves. So to do that, we're going to go to the customer login screen. I'm going to put the URL, in case you didn't already know, for that in the chat box. And then we'll go to the login screen. So this is the new login screen that we debuted just a few weeks ago. So from here we can do a few things. We can track one-off shipments and entries, but we can also sign up or log in. So you've set up the customer's bus ID, you've linked the accounts, now you want them to set up their user ID. You click on sign up, you can take this URL, give it to the customer, so then they can then fill in this information. Most critical is that they have to know what the bus ID is that you set up for them. That's the only thing they're not going to know necessarily, but they need to know that if they're going to set up their own user ID. So they put all this information in, they hit submit. That request does go to the support desk, and usually within the hour it'll get approved and the customer will receive an email with the new login instructions. Now in this new world we have, this new login world, customers can now request access to more than one bus ID at a time. So they come in here, and for every bus ID they want to have access to, they've got to go through this screen each and every time with the different bus IDs they want access to. And once they have that access, and I'm going to show you what that looks like, I've got access, let's go to the login screen. I've got access to a couple of external bus IDs. A lot of times when I do demos with customers, I try to use my external access because I don't want them to necessarily see a lot of things in FGV that they don't see as customers that only we UPSers see. So I'll go in, whoops, sign in. So now you can see, when I click on this down button, I've got access to two bus IDs. This is exactly what the customer would see as well if they had access to more than one bus ID. I've got access to the FGV demo bus ID from an external perspective, and I've also got access to Oasis Corp, our internal supply company that I sometimes use to demo FGV. So if I want to go to FGV demo, I click submit, and now I'm looking at the external view into the FGV demo bus ID. Now if I want to go back and go to the other one, unfortunately I will have to click log out and then go back to the login screen. Go to login. Unfortunately I have to re-enter my credentials and then I can access the other one, my Oasis Corp. Go back to it. All right, so I'll go to here, hit submit, and now I'm looking at the external view of Oasis Corp. I'm going to hit log out here. So again, a key feature these days is customers now with their user ID as their email address, and they can go into the sign up screen and they can request access to more than one bus ID under the same email address or user ID. All right. All right, so let's go back to FGV. And let's take a look at what I consider the most important screen of all when it comes to us as UPSers being able to manage and understanding our customers' setup. And that is right up here. I go to Setup Monitor, once again, Client Setup, and this very first one. This is a screen I encourage all of you to get very, very familiar with, okay? Because it's got everything you could ever need to know about your customer setup. So I'm going to click on this. Now it starts with, maybe you don't know the bus ID, you need to look it up. You can do that. Let's say I want to look up Emerson. I don't know how they're spelled, all right? So here I have all the customers whose name begins with Emer. Here's Emerson, the parent. I'm going to select it. And then all the details regarding Emerson are going to pull up. Now, if you're just entering a bus ID that you already know, you're not doing a lookup, one of the things I must tell you is that when you put in a bus ID, you don't hit the Enter key. You have to hit the Tab key. And then that will bring up all the details associated with that customer. So now I'm going to take a few minutes and walk you through all the key features of this bus ID detailed maintenance screen. I've talked about the lookup. Once I pull up the details, if I want to download all this information into a PDF to carry with me, maybe I want to share the details with the customer to show them how they're set up, I can click on this PDF and it'll download all the bus ID details into a PDF. If for some reason I wanted to deactivate this bus ID, maybe I've created a whole new bus ID set up for this customer and I want to get rid of or deactivate their old setup. We have a little link over here that says deactivate bus ID. Now you got to be very careful with this, okay? You got to know what you're doing. You don't want to be deactivating a bus ID when in fact somebody's using it. And as a matter of fact, it will not let you deactivate the bus ID unless you've unlinked any account numbers that are tied to it and you've deactivated any users that are tied to it. A bus ID cannot be deactivated unless all account numbers have been pulled off the bus ID and used and no active users exist on that bus ID. Now we have over here, you can see that bus ID edit functionality restricted. You won't see this very often, but we have a handful of our largest customers. As a matter of fact, let me show you Emerson as a good example. Notice for Emerson, bus ID edit functionality restricted, yes. This means you cannot do anything with Emerson if you wanted to. You can't move accounts around, you can't update email domains, you can't do anything. They're a very complicated setup. Years back, we did a ton of work to get Emerson properly structured in bus ID, and we don't want anybody messing with that structure, so it has to go through the support desk in order for changes to be made. We also have here, let me show another example. Let me use this one. Here we see the bus ID, right? And notice we have the field here, parent bus ID. Now right now, this particular customer, Benchmark Education, they're a standalone bus ID. They're not linked into any parent, and I don't see any brown bars for child bus ID, so they don't have a child bus ID tied up to them. So they're a standalone. But let's say I have a bus ID out here, maybe it's called Benchmark Corporate, and I wanted to make this bus ID a child of Benchmark Corporate. All I have to do is enter Benchmark Corporate, the bus ID here, hit Validate, Save, and voila, Benchmark EDU is now a child of the Benchmark Corporate. Now at the same time, let me pull up another customer that we've been working with a lot lately. Here's a customer, Teledyne Corporate. They're actually a parent. How do I know that? Well, because they have a whole slew of child bus IDs that roll up under them. If I pull up one of these child bus IDs, so I click on the child bus ID, now I'm looking at just the details for that child bus ID. You can see that I have the parents listed here, so clearly I have a parent-child relationship. But maybe I don't want this bus ID to be a child of Teledyne Corporate anymore. I want them to be a standalone. That is very easily accomplished. Right over here to the right, unlink from parent bus ID. So you click on this link and it'll pull this Teledyne cable SOL off the Teledyne corporate parent and make it a standalone independent bus ID. Very, very easy way to manage the whole parent-child relationship. Now, let's go down here a little bit more. Homepage dashboard default. Now, once again, this is going to match however it was set up when the bus ID was originally created, but maybe something changes. Maybe their main focus used to be brokerage, but now it's transportation. So you can come in here at any time and you can change their homepage dashboard default. So when they log in, they'll land on the shipments dashboard. You change this, you come down here, you hit validate, save, and now the users will log on to the when they log in, they'll land on the shipments dashboard. Now they can still go into their My Profile in FGV and change their landing page to be something other than what I put here. But any new users that come along, they will land on the shipments dashboard. Now the next one here below are the email domains, and this is critical. We get ourselves in so much trouble and so much hot water over email domains. So often customers change their email domains, or somebody gets married and they've changed their email address, or they've added a new subsidiary and that new subsidiary needs access to this bus ID, but their email domain's not here. So we can come in here and we can add as many email domains as we want to this bus ID. Or we can edit the ones that exist if it's changed to something else. It's very critical that these email domains are kept current, because if they're not, guess what? People may not be able to save reports, or they may not be able to log in. When we made this big change a few weeks ago with the login process, what we found was that since the customer first set up their user ID, they were using one particular email address. Well, 2 years, 3 years later, their email address changed, but we didn't know it because the user ID wasn't their email. They had a separate user ID. So we've had to go in and update users so their email domain was now tied to that bus ID. So you want to be very careful that whatever customers you have that need access to this particular bus ID, the domain has got to match right here. Now, once again, we talked about this earlier. We've got the product lines. Again, my suggestion is always default to transportation and brokerage. Don't check the other things unless you just know that they're going to be a supplier management, autogistics, or inventory customers. Down here we have the contact information, and it's absolutely critical that the client's contact email address has to be one of the domains listed up here. And again, I would strongly encourage you to avoid ever using public email domains here unless absolutely necessary. I'm going to come back down here to the parent. If I click, let's go back to the parent view. I'll click on the parent bus ID, scroll down. And here we have all the child bus IDs that roll up to it. We can go drill into any of these child bus IDs. They may have their own dedicated users. We can look at those users, see how they're structured, see when they last logged in, etc. All right, let me pull up, for purposes of examples, let me pull up Emerson again so we can see everything. Notice with Emerson, I've got a bar here for extract profiles, for EDI extracts. So Emerson has been set up with an EDI extract out of FGV. It's good to know because whenever you get in and if you want to start moving account numbers around or deleting account numbers, you got to be careful, because if they have an EDI extract and you're pulling an account off them as part of that EDI extract, they're going to lose data. So always be cognizant of whether or not they're set up with an EDI extract, because whatever account moves you make could impact that extract. All right, account numbers. Now this is where we get into a lot of trouble with customer access, right, because of the account number setup. What you want to do when you're looking at account numbers, especially somebody like Emerson, they've got a lot of account numbers, right? I can come over here, click on View All, and I can get a long list. And Emerson, you can see Emerson has a lot of accounts, right? If I want to, I can download all these accounts into an Excel file. Maybe I want to take it somewhere else and run a check or an audit of all these account numbers. Do I have everything I need? What's really great about this screen is if you have this an account number, maybe you want to move it off of this bus ID onto another, all you have to do is come over here, enter that new bus ID that you want the account number to be attached to. You can do up to 5 at a time. Put in the new bus ID, come down here, hit validate, save. In a matter of minutes, those accounts will get pulled off of this bus ID and moved on to whatever bus ID you've indicated in one of these boxes. And again, this is you got to be very careful with this because, we're very sensitive about customers' data security, and you can't just go in here willy-nilly start moving accounts around, and the next thing you know, a customer pops up and says, "Why do I have visibility in this stuff? I don't even know what this is. This isn't me." So always be very, very careful when you're moving accounts around. Maybe you want to completely unlink an account number. You want to take it off of there because maybe it's no longer used, or whatever reason you just want to pull it off the bus ID completely. All you got to do is come over here, check this box, and you can check up to 5 at a time, and come down, hit validate, save, and the account number will be unlinked from that bus ID in a matter of minutes. I tell people all the time, if you're ever wondering why a customer isn't seeing something in FGV, they're not seeing their shipments or they're not seeing their entries, check the shipment account number and then run it up against this list of account numbers to ensure that does that account number for that shipment or that entry, does it match one of the account numbers that's on this list? If it doesn't, then that's the reason the customer is unable to see that particular transaction. All right, let's go back to our main bus ID detail screen. We'll scroll down here. We also, what's handy about this bus ID detail screen is we can see whether or not the customer is receiving proactive email alerts. And as you can see, has quite a few. It tells you who set up the alert, and then it shows you who's receiving it. In this case, I've got a combination of some UPSers and some folks at Emerson that have set up these proactive email alerts going to a host of different folks. And we can also see the same thing for reports. We can see any scheduled reports, who set them up and who's receiving them. All right, and then the last really, really important feature of this bus ID maintenance screen are the external users. Okay, and this you can get a lot of good details off this external users list. One of the questions I get asked quite often is, how do I know if my customer is actually logging in and when they've last logged in? So when I open up this bar, the initial list I see are all of the current users that are active, right? And I can see when they last logged in. Now, if they don't log in for 90 days, their status is going to change to inactive. And when that happens, and you're going to hear this all the time, that customers are going to come back around and say, hey, my access isn't working. You go here, you see, well, that's because you're inactive. For example, if I go here and I click on all, now look, I've got another user here, a group of users here. Here's all the inactive ones. I got a bunch of folks that haven't logged in quite some time. So they're inactive. Now, if one of these customers comes along and they want to be reactivated, then you need to come up to the support link up here, customer help support, and you need to put information in the customer's bus ID and request that the bus ID or the user ID, this user be reactivated. It's very important that when you're sending in a customer support request that you provide as many details as possible. A lot of times we're left guessing in terms of what is being requested. I want to show you a couple of examples of what these support requests look like when they come through. So here's one that came to us from a UPSer on behalf of a customer. They were having issues with logging in. This guy was pretty good, gave us plenty of good details, but you can't ever give us too much details about what the issue with the customer's access is. Here's an example of support that came in directly from the customer themselves, right? So FGV does not recognize the customer's login, so we'll look that up. So I can't stress enough, don't leave out the details whenever you're submitting a customer support request. For example, request to reactivate them. Let's go back to our Bus ID details maintenance screen. Go back down to external users. Now the other thing we can do from here was when an individual leaves the company, if we wanted to be deactivated so they can't log back in, we can do that here, right? Unfortunately, we can't quickly reactivate them. That has to be done to the customer support link, but we can deactivate them when we see here. And then, the other thing you always want to do when a customer says, how come I can't get in? What's my user ID? You want to come into this external user list and you want to click on all to see if in fact, oh, there you are, you're inactive. That's why you can't log in. I need to reactivate you. We see that all the time. All right, so that kind of gives you a good overview of the all-important Bus ID detail screen. Again, always available from Setup Monitor, Client, Bus ID Details. None of this client setup, you've got your details maintenance screen, you've got your link to set up a new Bus ID, you've got your link to link account numbers to a Bus ID, and then lastly you have a link to go check to see if an account is already linked to a Bus ID or not. All right, let me switch back over to the dashboard screen here. Eileen, is there anything coming through on the chat that we need to review or discuss at this point? Have you seen anything?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Most of the questions I think we've answered. There's a couple that we'll have to follow up with one-on-one.
Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah. Well, since we're recording this, we'll be able to see questions that have come through, and we'll get back to you guys. Now let's go through. I want to go through a couple things here real quick that I hear from UPSers all the time. One of them is, why is my customer unable to view this shipment? Or why is my customer unable to access the document images associated with this shipment? Okay. So I want to show you an example. Let me. Whenever you're in FGV and you're looking at a customer like I am right now, Telecrafters, if I go in here and I try to track shipments, I'm only going to be able to track shipments associated with Telecrafters here, right? But if I want to be able, as a UPSer, to track any shipment I want from any customer, I got to go back to my UPSer, or what I call all client setup. And to do that, I go up here, I enter an asterisk, I hit save. Now, if you want to ensure that every time you log in to FGV, you're landing on the UPSer access, check this box, default to this client next time I log in. So now I'm back on all clients, so I can track any shipment I want. Let's take a look at a nice normal shipment where everything works fine. Everybody sees everything they need to see as they should. So here we have a air freight consol shipment from China to Ohio. It's got the shipper, the consignee, the principal, they're all there. Now, one of the things I want to bring your attention to, because I'm telling people this all the time, is that when you're looking at the shipper, when you're looking at the receiver, you can quickly tell whether or not that party is tied into FGV and may have visibility into that shipment. So I can tell you by looking at this, the shipper is not going to have any visibility into this shipment. The receiver and the principal, on the other hand, will. How do I know that? Well, when I look at the shipper here, notice the name is preceded by the account number, right? When I see the account number like this, that tells me that this account number has not been linked to a bus ID. It is a standalone account number, not linked to any FGV bus ID, so there's nobody getting visibility in FGV into anything keyed under this account number. The receiver and the principal, on the other hand, their name is preceded by the bus ID. In this case, it's benchmark EDU. So I know for a fact that this particular consignee account number and this particular principal account number are tied into the benchmark EDU bus ID, and this customer does in fact have visibility into the shipment. Always something important to check is, let me show you an example where that's not necessarily the case. Now, hopefully everybody knows that in terms of this document images link up here, the only party that has access besides UPSers to this document images link is the principal party. So if we miskey this principal party or don't key it at all, the customer is not going to have access to the document images. Let me show you an example of that. We'll hit track. Now here's an ocean LCL shipment. It's got a shipper. The shipper is not tied into any bus ID, so they don't have visibility. The receiver has a bus ID, Grindmaster, so they potentially have visibility in the shipment. But look what's missing. There's no principal party. Our ops folks did not key a principal party on this shipment. Now this used to be a big problem a couple of years ago, but our Ocean IE folks put forth a concerted effort working with ops around the world to make sure they understood the importance of keying a principal account. And I'm happy to report that only about 2% of our ocean shipments today are missing a principal account. But when this principal account is missing, I don't see it here, that tells me that no customer anywhere has access to this document image link. Nobody can see it except UPSers because it's missing. Another instance where that can be the case, let me show you this example. We hit track. Well, I didn't do that one right, did I? What am I doing wrong? Oh, I copied it wrong. My bad. One more time. Now with this shipment, here we have an ocean forwarding shipment, FCL. Notice the principal party here is a T account. This happens, it's not that prevalent, but I definitely encounter it probably about once a week. When the operations, for whatever reason, they didn't identify the proper principal party for the account, so they keyed in a T account. And T accounts are not locked, are not tied into FGV. So this, again, there is no customer anywhere that's going to have access to the document images because the principal account was keyed wrong. In this case, it's a T account. So whenever you have a customer saying, I can't see my doc images, you want to zero right in on this principal and make sure that that account number is tied to the bus ID, the same bus ID that the customer is tied to. And it's not just doc images, right? Because oftentimes they'll say, I don't see my shipment at all. Well, that's because we used a T account. We didn't use your account. So therefore, you can't see the shipment at all. Because oftentimes we'll see that they got the receiver right. So the customer sees the shipment as a receiver, but they don't see it as a principal, which means they don't have access to the document images link. Something very important to remember. All right, one other little thing I want to share with you that I hear quite often. I know a lot of our people are out there scheduling reports on customers' behalf, right? So they're over here in reports. They're setting up a report. They set it up. They've saved it. They put it into my folder for scheduling purposes. Once I get there, I can show you. Come on. So they come in here, and they'll want to set up a report for ongoing emailing. They'll click on this little window box. They'll give the report a name. They'll hit submit, and then the report will appear in my folder. Right? They go in and they want to set up the report to be scheduled. They say, okay, I want the report to go out every Wednesday in the afternoon. They'll come in here and they'll put the email addresses, and they'll go next. But when they come here to put into email addresses, they all of a sudden will find that, wait a minute, what's all this? I'm unable, it will not accept the emails I'm trying to put in for this customer to receive this report. What's going on? Typically what the problem is, when you cannot go in and set up a report to be scheduled for a customer until you've emulated their bus ID first, right? So you need to make sure that if, for example, you want to set up a report for, I don't know, let's use Emerson again, right? You've got to first go in here and emulate their bus ID. So you see Emerson here. Then go into reports and do the scheduling and set up the emails. I see this all the time. UPSers are trying to set up a report and schedule it for customers, but they didn't emulate first the customer's bus ID prior to doing that. So please make sure you do that. Let me talk about reference number tracking. This has been a source of frustration since our January release for a number of customers and UPSers. At the moment, this is as of the January release, we made a lot of changes. At the moment, when you go into this quick search feature, right, I don't care if you're in the shipments dashboard or you're in the customs entry dashboard. What am I doing? Back up, back up. When you go over here to do a quick search, if you do it by shipment, you're always going to pull up a shipment, whether you're in the customs entry dashboard or the shipments dashboard. So if I'm over here in customs entry, if I go here and I put in a shipment, it's not going to pull up the entry for that shipment. It's going to pull up the shipment, okay? Now, if I put in master bill number, it's going to pull up the shipment, not the entry. The only time it's going to pull up the entry is when I actually scroll down and select entry number, right? Then it's going to actually go for an entry. Or broker reference number, it's going to pull up an entry. But while these other things, it's going to pull up a shipment. If I do brokerage shipment number, it'll pull up the entry. But we're telling our people and our customers today, if you want to do reference number tracking, you need to go up here and use this data search tool. Okay, you need to come in here, nullify the date, so just leave it like that, select one. And depending on what you check up here, either customs entries or shipments. So if I go to customs entries, for example, and I nullify the date, and I select a reference type. Any of these reference types I now use to track will search for an entry. It will not search for a shipment. So I can use UPS package tracking number, the billing invoice number, any of this, and it'll pull up the associated entry. And same thing as on the shipment side. If I come in here under shipments, any of these reference types that I put in is only going to look for a shipment. And the nice thing about this particular reference tracking is you can enter multiple reference numbers at a time, and you can even use a wildcard if you don't know the complete reference number to do a search on that. So this is actually a better tool for doing your reference number tracking as opposed to what you have in the quick search feature on the dashboard. Now we have a release coming, the next big release is coming April 26th, and we will be fixing this. So if you're in the customs entry dashboard, anything that you pull down off quick search, it will actually go for the entries when you're in the customs entry dashboard. But at the moment, it will not. So please be aware of that. All right, now just one last thing I want to show you here is some resources, okay? Up here under support, we have something called the resources library. And there's really two things I want to bring your attention to that I get asked about all the time. One is this very first one, FGV reports. This is a PDF document that lists every single canned report in FGV and the data elements that they contain, right? So if you're ever sitting back wondering, hey, can I pull this particular data element from an FGV report? Pull up this document. You can do a Control F search in the PDF to say, okay, hey, where do I find container number? It'll go through the whole document. It'll show you the different reports that have container number, right? So instead of asking folks, hey, do you know if FGV has this particular data element in its reports, just go to this document. It's all there. The other one that's very popular that I share with customers a lot is this link right here. It's a 4-minute video. How do I schedule an FGV report? I'll be the first one to admit that the structure we have for setting up and scheduling reports isn't the most intuitive in the world. And we got some improvements we need to make there. But if you want to teach a customer or teach yourself how do we set up a report for an ongoing email, click on this video for customers as well, and it'll walk you through exactly how we do that. Now, as I mentioned a minute ago, on April 26th, we've got the next big release coming to FGV. I want to give you a peek into what that's going to look like. What we're going to be doing on April 26th is we're going to completely redesign the shipment detail screen and also the purchase order detail screen. I want to show you this is just a mock-up of what that's going to look like. But say if we were on the shipments dashboard, we're also going to be tightening up the search results. So we're going to tighten it up in such a way that customers won't have to do as much scrolling from left to right, and focus mainly on going up and down. But in the current world, let me just show you, when you're in the dashboard, and this is a big source of frustration for customers, I know for a fact. Let me go to pull up one of these shipments. in the current world, when you pull up your search results screen, you then click on a shipment number, right? You get this, what we call the timeline screen. And you get some summary details, but customers are typically wanting to get to the full detail list for the shipment. And they have to click on the shipment number again to finally get to what I call the shipment detail screen, which is all this good stuff. With this release on April 26th, this is going to go away. What it's going to be replaced by is this. You're going to land on the search results. You're going to click on the shipment number. You're going to go to that timeline screen. You're going to see the timeline for the shipment and some summary details. But what's really cool is you're going to have these tabs. All the shipment detail data is going to be put into this tabular format. So if you want to go to the shipment milestones, or if you want to go to additional shipment information, maybe you want to go to the flight or the voyage information, you'll be able to jump, or customers will be able to jump around these different tabs to get to the specific details for that shipment that they want to see. So we're really excited about this new shipment details, and we're going to be doing the same thing for our purchase orders. And then we're going to be doing this for customs entries as well, but that will be happening in August. All right? And that's where this is the last thing I want to share with you is this FGV SharePoint site. This is the site where we maintain all of our FGV collateral. I'm going to put it on the chat box here real quick so everybody can access it. So I want to bring your attention just to a few things. Just last week, we posted a brand new FGV customer presentation deck. It's a brief presentation that gives customers just a high-level overview of what FGV is all about. We also, we had a big call last week with a number of customers. I call it FGV 101. And that was recorded right here. We have a customer introduction to Flex Global View. We've already had almost 200 views of this recording since we released it last week. So it's become quite popular. Another really handy document I try to encourage people to use are the FGV FAQs. We collect and are constantly updating questions that we receive on a regular basis to this FAQ document. It's divided by brokerage, transportation. So, you know, if you've ever got some time and you're wondering what some of the most frequently asked questions that we receive regarding FGV are, that's right here. So some good resources for you if you need some more support with FGV. All right, and that about does it for my UPS or FGV review. Eileen, is there any other chats that have come up that we need to discuss, or?
Yeah, just real quick, you can even further customize this dashboard for a customer. If you hit the apply filters there, yep. And so right now the default is 120 days, but if the customer is more interested in departure date, estimated arrival, delivery date, they can change their view. If they only are interested in, you know, shipments from a certain port to port pair or country, or they just want to see their shipper but not the consignee or principal, they can customize that. And then apply, and that'll immediately impact their dashboard.
Yeah, that's a good point. In fact, I was just working with a UPSer prior to this call who has just set up a report to go to a customer. They wanted to see all of their estimated, a report every day that showed them their estimated deliveries for the upcoming week. And they were concerned that, you know, maybe the report's going to come through and don't have any data. And I said, well, you know, you can, if they get a blank report, you can quickly go into their dashboard, change it to estimated delivery date. Maybe you want to see, we'll look at just next 60 days at save and apply. And now you're going to see all your shipments that have estimated delivery dates over the next 2 months, including the delivered ones. And, you know, you should find that if there's nothing on this dashboard, that tells you why you see nothing on the report as a way to cross-check it.
Yes, and so the filters are different for each module. So, you know, we have, especially on the purchase orders, if you have a buyer that just wants to know their information, they can filter it down to very specific items for their dashboard. So they don't have to go in and search for the data. It's there for them automatically. Yes,
good point. Good point. All right, was there anything else that came up in the chat that we need to talk about?
I think we got most of them. We'll go back through and and make sure that we captured everything.
All right. Well, I'm happy to report we had over 300 participants on today's call, so I much appreciate everybody jumping on today. I'll be sending out the recording of today's session. And as always, if you have any other questions, please let me know. Eileen and Carol and Doug, thank you for all the help, and hope everybody's staying safe. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.